Hey y'all, I'm Kelly Moody and you're listening to the Ground Shots podcast, an audio project exploring our relationship to ecology through conversations and storytelling with farmers, herbalists, craftspeople, naturalists, artists, and more. Hey y'all, it's Kelly with episode 3 of the Ground Shots podcast. I'm currently in Portland, Oregon, and I've been staying with a friend for the week and doing interviews with a cohort of folks that I set up times with while I've been here, and it's been really wonderful to meet with these people and have conversations that I will then be sharing with you all in the coming months. So stay tuned for that. And so this episode 3, is a conversation with Laurie Quesinberry, who is someone from Southern Virginia, but not the same area of Southern Virginia where I'm from. And if you didn't know already, I am from the Piedmont region of Southern Virginia, right on the border. But Laurie is from Laurel Fork, Virginia, which is way more into the Appalachian Mountains. Laurie is from this area of Appalachia, and her family has been living in the same kind of mountain area or holler for I don't know how many generations, like kind of similar to how my family's been in the same region for a long time, 4, 5, 6 generations, I'm not sure. And so because of that, she has lived closely with the land there, and she calls herself a granny root digger. So she has, for her whole life, been wandering the woods and harvesting plants for medicine and to sell. And I think that her relationship to that digging has changed throughout her life. And so in our conversation, we discussed kind of where she's at with it right now and the kind of things that she cares about and is thinking about right now in relationship to her heritage of working with plants in that place on the land. Also, we discuss in this interview the complexity of traditional Appalachian root digging and the loss of diggers and the influx of outsiders coming in and overharvesting. It's definitely a nuanced conversation, because just to say that, like, I don't think either one of us are advocating anyone go out and dig any ginseng, which is one of the plants that Laurie works with, and with especially since there's been TV shows made about ginseng and other woodland medicinals, and the popularity and knowledge of what ginseng is and how to find it has grown, and so it's definitely a big deal to have a conversation about these plants that are at risk. Laurie and I both have a relationship with the United Plant Savers, an organization that advocates for medicinal plants that have been deemed at risk at one point through a process that they come up with. And a lot of these plants are at risk because of overharvesting and also because of climate change and other factors. So just to say that like that's a big part of the way that Laurie and I talk about these plants is thinking about the long-term relationship that humans have with this forest and the Appalachian forest and the plants that are there. So it's a big conversation, and you may or may not agree with Laurie in every aspect of it, but I just welcome you to have an open mind in hearing her story and perspective and how she's navigating thinking about continuing to use those plants. And with that, we also have a big conversation about just wildcrafting in general and whether we should even do it or whether we should garden or figure out other ways that we can have a balanced impact on the land through our harvesting of things that we consider wild. We talk about the Black Cohosh catacombs, pretty sad story that Laurie mentions. We talk about using leaf medicine of woodland medicinals, and that's something that Laurie's been experimenting with. And I think I'll leave you at that so you can go ahead and listen to the interview. And I really hope you enjoy it. I really enjoyed talking with Laurie, and I really hope that we get to do another conversation at some point to share with you. So enjoy this episode. Burn, burn with the light that reveals our faces. Burn, burn with the heat that will warm these places. Okay. So, yay, we finally got to do our interview.
Yes.
And this is the first time I've ever done this via online chatting. Laurie and I met at the Good Medicine Confluence in Colorado, and I tried to chase her down for an interview, but she's just so busy, and everybody wants to hang out with her, so we didn't quite catch an interview. So so we are attempting to do one here now on Google Hangouts. So
I think it'll be good, everybody. I think it will.
There weren't that many people from the South, I feel like, at the Confluence conference or whatever. I mean, there was definitely some people from Asheville, but people who were like born and raised in the South. So I remember I was talking to Dave Meesters of Terra Silver School, and he had just gone to your class, and he was like, I just have to sit with the class. It was just so amazing. He was just feeling very emotional after your class. So, and I was
he's such an awesome man. He really is. He's amazing.
So I was like, I want to go talk to that person. And then we got in a conversation about just all kinds of things to do with Virginia, medicinal plants, and all this stuff. So, and that was what sparked me wanting to interview you as a part of this audio project. So, can you introduce yourself and like where you live and where you're from and like what you generally do with yourself, Laurie?
Okay. I live in a little town back in the hollers called Laurel Fork, Virginia. We have one little gas station. Yeah. Drive a couple towns away to go to the grocery store. And our family's been back in the hollers for a long, long time. Pretty much as long as anybody can remember. Yeah, just living off the woods, making our own way. Of course, some people move away and get education and whatnot, but there's remained a little core group of us. We still consider ourselves a little clan and our little core family, and we're diggers. That's kind of our life. The woods provides what we need. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, so that's me, Laurie the Digger.
And you run a small herbal business called Bear Alchemy, right?
Yeah, so I have a little business called Bear's Alchemy. Bear Alchemy. Gotta remember that. So I have this little business called Bear Alchemy, and it is kind of the culmination of my work. I call it heritage medicine. Mm-hmm. And it's what I share from my mountain with the herbalists in the world that I meet when I come out. But my main goal there is just to create something wonderful out of the land that's being destroyed, to save the plants rather than poaching them off a good, lush forest where they're safe. Instead, to go to where they're at risk of being lost totally. And I try to harvest as much as I can, plant back in my forest. I mail them all over the place, give them away just to get them to homes. But one of the main goals is to create a forest farm for myself. Mm-hmm. So I can learn how to permaculture Solomon seal in the yard. Mm-hmm. And then on a little stretch of holler back in the woods Uncle Bert owns, do myself a little forest farm. I never want to really grow so big, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Bear Alchemy is just a small little thing, and I want it to always stay that way with, just a core group of herbalists that get roots from me to make wonderful medicine from, and then create wonderful medicine for, pretty much a consumer, and the person new to mountain medicine. Because I don't want to put too much pressure on the plants. I really don't think that one digger can really sustainably keep their forests good around them and supply like 50 or 100 herbalists. There's just, the roots take too long to grow. So another passion that I have in with Bear Alchemy is wanting to use leaf medicine. And just getting people exploring the leaves of ginseng, the leaves of black cohosh, golden seal, blue cohosh, I suspect, wild ginger. I think crane's bill we could use the leaves of too. And just because root medicine, I feel, is really strong, powerful medicine if it's harvested the right way at the right times of the year. And that's like held for the sickest people or for the most special uses. I think most people that, want to just sustain their health or, standard PMS problems like black cohosh leaves would help that. It may take more leaf, but at least the plant still lives. And then we could have farms to produce leaf. And that's like so much easier than the root.
I've totally, after I did the United Plant Savers internship years ago, they definitely talked about leaf medicine and stuff too. And I remember they were like, but the best way to hide ginseng from poachers is to go pick a couple leaves off each plant. Or just like people who are going and taking all of it, in the national forest. And so we would go and collect leaves and, in the right before they start to turn yellow, I think, like right at that time, like, and even maybe when they're starting to yellow, but I think maybe they're not optimal medicine at that time, but we still made tea out of it and stuff, and
I think I have a totally different theory about ginseng leaf than the standard theory.
Tell me about it.
So, see, in Korea, I found out that the leaves of ginseng are medicine and the root of ginseng is food. Whoa. And they put it in some kind of special soup.
Whoa.
Yeah.
This is American ginseng too, right? Because they buy, or is it the Korean ginseng?
I don't know. I think they're farming it over there. The farm production is what I was looking at, so I think it's a Korean ginseng. But they take the leaves in early spring. But I notice when you go in the woods, we pop tops of ginseng from the mouth. Anything that's not going to create a berry, you pop the top off of. And that's so other people can't poach your ginseng. But then you can go back and it still creates another top the next year. Sometimes you inhibit your berry production, like in the sequence of years that you should get berries, but it'll still produce berry. And it'll just go dormant. It's like a little deer came and nibbled off the top of the ginseng. It doesn't kill it. So I think we should take the ginseng leaves in the early spring when all the good energetics is pushing up into the leaf. And just take ones that are either not going to make a berry, like one set, 5 leaves, or 2 prongers, or go and take 1 or 2 sets off your 3 or 4 prongs, so it can still make a berry, and then use that for medicine. Or we could just produce ginseng solely for leaf.
And leave the roots, or let them go for a lot longer time than they would normally be allowed, I guess,
yeah, like we could, you could plant in a field or a woods full of ginseng in my woods, and I could harvest leaf off that until I died.
Mhm.
From one planting.
Mhm.
So it's low investment. Less time intensive, quicker. Yeah, I think that would, yeah, farm leaves.
Yeah, it sounds great. I mean, I've tasted them. I mean, they do taste very medicinal, and I feel
Even the
it.
stem,
Yeah. It's
even the big thick stems. I was chewing on that for a video the other day.
Mhm.
And oh my gosh, I was like, this tastes just like the root.
Mhm. Hmm.
But the leaves had just opened up, and unfurled good. And I think it had a lot of really good medicine going up in it.
So
And when you get it later in the fall, it doesn't have that taste as
yeah.
much.
So
I
just
think all of it's going back down.
to give people context, what the part of the world you're in is basically the Southern Appalachians, which has some of the
Yeah,
oldest genetic diversity in the world because it wasn't glaciated. So the plants are just so old and like very, yeah, they just have a lot of wisdom, and so a
yeah,
lot of these
it's
plants you're
ancient.
mentioning are like mostly woodland medicinals because there's just so much forest and there's so many plants that grow under the canopy of the forest. And um, I'm
So
curious.
they say that we are the most biodiverse region in all the world.
Yeah, I believe it. I mean, it's
See, and
just.
I'm on the southern Appalachian Plateau,
Mhm.
so I'm a little bit different
Mhm.
from the other Appalachian. So I'm a lot more rocky
Hmm.
with a lot more quartz in
Hmm.
the ground.
Hmm.
And there's this really special magic
Mhm.
down in there with all that quartz. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but ginseng grows in our area different than anywhere else
Huh.
in the Appalachian. We don't get as much weight to them,
Hmm.
but we have older roots
Hmm.
and they're like stronger. It's like
Mhm.
stronger genetics. And I think it's because, like you said, it's some of the most ancient, strong genetics that came down,
Mhm.
and kind of hid in our little bowls. We
Yeah.
have like all these little bowls
Mhm.
on the outer ridge, and it's just, you go down in there and it's like you're in a whole other world.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
That's okay. I don't know what I was going to ask you right in that moment, but um,
Uh,
the topic of wildcrafting is something that I feel like is a hot topic right now, and I know in the West it's kind of a different thing and that's where I've been a lot lately, the past few years, but I'm from the South and I spend a lot of time in Appalachia, but there's a lot of people who are just kind of like maybe we shouldn't wildcraft that much, or like
yeah,
maybe it's just too many people doing it, and like it's like a taker mentality or colonialistic sort of mentality. But I think after having lived in Appalachia and in the South, it's kind of hard to totally have that no wildcrafting mentality because of the fact that it's just such abundance, and there's like techniques for like what you were saying with harvesting the leaves for tending those plants in a way that actually makes them more abundant. So can you talk a little bit about like just sustainable wildcrafting techniques, like more
yeah,
about that, and like how you would do that with ginseng or other plants that you work with?
yeah. So I noticed the same thing too when I visited
Mhm.
out west.
Mhm.
There's a total different mentality towards wildcrafting
Mhm.
than there is on the East Coast or the
Mhm.
Appalachian. And I think it's because wildcrafting is more of our heritage,
Yeah.
and because we do live in such a biodiverse, abundant region,
Mhm.
even the areas that are getting over harvested with plants,
Mhm.
the families that have done it historically for a long time, if their areas have been pushed out because of coal mining or whatnot,
Mhm.
then they just go to another area,
Mhm.
and they go on somebody else's land,
Mhm.
you know. And I think that you're absolutely right. There's a lot of concerns with wildcrafting, as there needs to be.
Mhm.
And I've been doing this most of my life, I just recently learned that some of the impacts of harvesting different plants in different ways, what happens, because there's no box that you can put any of these plants into and say, this is a way to do it. Taking 1/3 of your ginseng patch, you're going to genetically change that patch. And it's not going to produce the strong babies that it needs to continue to thrive and grow. You just kind of cut off its genetics because it needs at least 20 to 30 plants to survive. But then you go to Solomon seal and you take 1/3 of its patch, and oh my gosh, it'll multiply the next year. And you're like, has anybody been in here? It doesn't look like anyone's touched it. And so there's those concerns of how does what you do to this patch, even aerial parts, some plants, if we take all of their aerial parts, it won't grow back right the next year, or it'll stop its biennial thing and it'll just go. I notice that teasel does that. If it gets mowed down in my area, it won't come back up. And I'm like, what happened? So I don't really know. Red clover loves to be messed with. So I think the number one thing when we talk about wildcrafting is you're not wildcrafting wild spaces, you're wildcrafting your garden. And your garden is something that you know each individual plant and you know what to do with it and how to do it and how not to hurt it. And I think that if we're going to wildcraft sustainably, that's the number one thing that everyone needs to learn, even all of us diggers. I would love for somebody to do research on all of this, Then another thing I think is really important is knowing what to do with it when you bring it home. And not getting big eyes. So you're at passion flower, and you're getting all this passion flower. And you get home and you're like, I didn't realize it was that much, but it was so pretty and it'll make good medicine and I want it, and there's so much of it and it's okay, And then you get home and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough screens. I don't have enough trays. What do I do? It's raining. It's mildewing. I don't have a dehydrator. And then you lose it, And I've done that with roots, oh my gosh. And so even if you're harvesting to replant somewhere else, it takes 2 hours to get a bunch of plants that take a week to put back. And then what are you going to do in the meantime with it? So I think when we go wildcrafting, we need to really intimately know what's going on. And like wildcraft areas where it's going to be lost anyways. If we would just focus on those areas, that could supply like so much because everybody knows somewhere where they're putting in a new, road back to their building, or they're going to expand here, or they're going to make a platform there, And even if you can't harvest it for medicine that year, you could move them to your garden. And after a few years, they would filter through, whatever toxins. I think another really important thing about wildcrafting is I don't believe that people are paying enough attention to the land that they're taking it from. And they make a lot of assumptions about the land that they take it from. And I bring this up because I saw this recently at one of the conferences that I attended this summer or spring, We're not even in summer yet, I don't believe. But, when I was attending the conference, I noticed a lot of different people wildcrafting different items around the area. And it was beautiful, to see them wanting to take home a piece of that medicine and utilize that. But then I kept thinking in the back of my head, like, what if they sprayed here? What water goes through here?
Like Colorado is in a drought, and it's not really good to. I mean, we were just in Colorado, and I had concern about any wildcrafting right there just because of not knowing what the drought was doing to the land, too. But.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that they weren't spraying anything, but then what are they spraying to build? Are they putting, because it was so dry, but I've seen this at other conferences, and it was like, and you don't know where what goes over the ground. You don't know what's in the ground. I drove by a place out there. I think it was out there. They said that, that whole area is closed off because there's a leaking tank underneath the ground. And I'm like, whoa, And so we really need to know it like we know our garden, and have wisdom. And when we go to other places, and I've been guilty myself, the first time I went to California, holy moly, just to see the stuff I harvested. And then I came home and I was like, it starts dawning on you as you go, and you learn. So I think that's really, really important. Ooh, one other thing I think is really important is the right tools that don't hurt the plants. So one thing that I see very commonly, and you may have seen it too, they have this ginseng spike thing. It's like a little hoe that comes down, and they just boom, boom, and they'll knock around the dirt around. And it looks really cool. It breaks up the ground really good, and it'll get up the rocks, in there. But you don't know what else is in the ground. I go in the ground and I might pull out ginseng, pterillium, and bloodroot. All out of the same little hole, because you don't just dig one little hole; you dig big around it, so you can chase your roots. And so when you have tools that are really aggressive and big like that, you don't know what you're cutting. You don't know what else is in there. There might be lady slipper down in there, or something in your area that's really, really rare, that's in the dormant phase while somebody's harvesting something else, or osha, when it's dormant, or yellow jasmine roots that go a long, long ways out from the bush, that's going really quickly, I understand, from the middle part of the United States. So I think having the right tool and being less invasive. I use a flat tip screwdriver, real long.
Wow.
Or a dandelion puller with the two little forks. And that's all I use to harvest with. For my barks, I use a very sharp knife that I wash aggressively in between each thing that I use. Simply because I don't really think of cross-contamination as much, just because I'm not in that GMP compliance framework of mind. What I think more about is what fungus am I possibly taking from here to there and introducing that may harm what I'm cutting next. Because who knows all the funguses and bacteria out there in the woods. So, I don't think anybody. So I think it's really smart to clean our tools really, really well in between harvesting this or that. And make sure that our tools are really sharp too. It goes into that not harming thing. So you've got to spend another $10 on another pair of clippers this month. Invest in the plants and your own medicine to have really good tools to do it with. And, your plants are going to be happy and they're going to live. And yeah, so that's my long.
Cool. Thank you. That's really informative.
I had this really, if you want to cut this out, but I have this thought, and maybe somebody that listens might know. Okay. So there's a problem in the Appalachia with Black Cohosh harvesting.
Oh, yeah.
We know that it was a $40 trillion industry, a couple years ago when they researched. We know that they're taking out kilotons upon kilotons wild harvesting out of the Appalachia. What a lot of people don't realize is that when it's making it to the distributor that has to test it for FDA compliance to go further with the product, they're finding that it's not testing with the right enough constituents for the overseas market and not enough of the constituents for the United States market. So sitting up in an unnamed, disclosed place is thousands and thousands of pounds of black cohosh root and its catacombs.
Wow.
Dying. It's just burlap bag after burlap bag of molding black cohosh. The person who, I wouldn't say privilege, the person who was able to find out this piece of information described it as the darkest catacomb that she had ever been to, and a tomb, and it really affected her for a long time coming out of there. So I have this, I think a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what's wrong with our black cohosh? What are we as diggers doing wrong? That all of this is just for nothing, So, first off, black cohosh is a poor man's root. Yeah. It only pays 75 cents to $1.25 a dry pound.
Wow, that is, yeah.
If you've ever dug black cohosh or messed with it, it's a very gnarly root and that grows around anything in the ground. So you have rocks, you have other roots, whatnot, just embedded in there. So you have to wash it, you have to break it, you have to get all of that out. You don't really get a lot of weight. I estimate about maybe 150 plants to a pound, but I'm not really sure. I need to work on those numbers. But it takes astronomical amounts to do this. So what I'm thinking is we go in the woods with a 5-gallon bucket and a shovel, and just basically rape to get the black cohosh. You just put in your shovel, you pop up this great big rhizome, you throw them in your 5-gallon buckets, you go home, wash it, break it, all that. Well, when you're doing that, all of these, and they're different from regular roots, they're very thick, meaty hair roots that come off, or tap roots maybe. And the part that we're taking out of the ground is this rhizome of dead fingers of. So all of this main part that we pop up out of the ground is little fingers of rhizomes. That's the dead growth bud from the. Is the main medicine in those tap roots. I think that's a valid question, search that to find out, because this seems like the dead part up here. So maybe there's not really strong constituents in all of that.
And that's the part that weighs the most, I guess. So that's what people take more of. And that's really interesting. And I had never heard about, that's crazy.
And if that part isn't the part with the constituents in it, well, holy mackerel, we can take every one of those and plant them back.
Yeah.
And, chase the cohosh roots. Of course, it'd make harvesting way harder. An interesting little fact about black cohosh is Jeannie Dunn from Red Moon Herbs. Love her. She's awesome and supports wildcrafting and teaches wildcrafters how to be more sustainable with their work. But she was given a price list for roots from 1913. And we actually get paid less now for Black Cohosh than they did in 1913.
Really?
Yeah, standard in 1913 was $1.75.
Wow.
So we're making less money. It's so wild.
You would think it wouldn't even
the
be
industry.
worth it to people, but I guess the demand is so high. But it's crazy. I don't know how does that happen?
Yeah, I don't have a clue. I guess back then maybe it was valued there because that was way more than $1.75 to us today.
I mean, maybe more pharmacists use Black Cohosh too in like standard medical practice. I feel like probably.
Yeah, because back then, you didn't have pharmaceuticals like we do today and supplements.
Will you tell me a little bit about? I don't know how much time you have, but I just have a few more questions, if that's okay. Okay. You were talking about how the place where you live, it's part of the heritage, at least for a lot of people, to dig roots or to have some kind of relationship with the land. And I think that's something that, again, is also like more on the East Coast because, as colonizers, all of us, we came, our ancestors came there a lot longer than, in the West. It hasn't been as long. Yeah. And so there's just a different time scale on like how people have been with the land, And so will you talk a little bit about the heritage of just working with plants in your area and your relationship to that?
So our family, like a lot of families when we first came to America, didn't like the colonies, and all the people. And they kind of were little outlaws, and they decided to travel the wilderness road that came out to the furthest outpost at the time, out by Tennessee and all. And so different families just kind of settled all along the Appalachia. And they kind of hid out in the mountain. And the word is, in a lot of the mountain, that God gave us the strength to climb the mountain, and the mountain gave us the ginseng to give us our living, to provide us a living, And so it's always been, because ginseng was our first export, as a nation. Ginseng's always been an integrated part of how do you live off the land and make money, so that provided them a little bit of money. While I'm sure they took time to get to know this land and how to live in this woods. And over time, the clans grow and the connections with the land become so deep. They really do. The forest and the woods provides your food, your shelter, your medicine, your clothes, And all of this is just kind of passed down with each child, We sit on the porch at night and, the music that we play is stories of making moonshine in the woods and the trees that we cut down for our house and the creek rising and, making it through the winter, and it's just all these rich connection and history. Other people come and they don't even know what's back there. Yeah, so you grow with this mentality that it's personal. It's in you. A lot of the people here, they've never left the mountain. Go from my mountain 2 hours away to Roanoke to the biggest hospital because you're so sick, and they think you're going to take them to kill them. Because people go to Roanoke and sick and they never come back, because maybe it was cancer for somebody in the family, But they don't leave because the mountain has what they need. The community has what they need. There's no need to go to Walmart once a week or even once a month. What does Walmart have that you need? You know, of course, we don't buy new clothes often. They're hand-me-downs and pass around, and somebody else in the family goes to Walmart, you know. But they're kind of the people that have broken that connection, you know, with the woods, and they've went to the world, you know. I have a saying that they bring technology in their pills to steal our heritage, you know. And I understand that college education is important, you know. Knowing how the world works is important, you know. But at what cost? You know, to lose what you've been given inside of you with the mountain to go to even Blacksburg to college. You're not going to come back, you know, to live that simple life again, you know. And so, yeah, and for me, I see a lot of, you know, even talking to you as reclaiming that we're losing and taking it away from being something dirty, you know. Digging, poaching, wildcrafting. Wildcrafting is a nice feel-good word. I think, you know, it gives you warm, fuzzy feelings and all. Wildcrafting in my area is poaching. You don't own land. You're poor. That's why you're in the woods. But I feel like it's time to elevate it and to bring it back to its purity and to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly in all of this so we can all look at it different. And I believe enough of us will make the right choice, you know, when we see the moral good or bad and we're at that crossroads like I was at, you know. What do you do?
So do you feel
like unknown the truth? Yeah.
Do you feel like that the heritage of just knowing the plants and working with the land closely is something that is dying out there, or like young people are not doing it?
It is inundated with a generation of rapers, basically. People that have other jobs or other means, but know that there's good money in the woods and it's their bank account. You know, and they can go there and get it. Now, they're digging high value things. They're probably not digging the black cohosh. Mental illness, because a lot of the people that are the people that don't quite fit in with the rest of society into their little box, you know. Very wise, brilliant people. But you can't get them into town very often, let alone into a factory to work, you know. So, yeah, they're dying out. Their children are going away, you know, and they're not coming back. And I think we're going to lose it. I think we're going to lose it to that. And I think we're going to lose it to activism, you know, and to awareness. Because I think it's going to come to a place, hopefully sooner or later, actually, where they'll put good regulations down, you know, and stop the wild black cohosh from coming out. Stop the wild, you know, golden seal from coming out.
So you think you're talking about activism like it's a good thing or a bad thing to your heritage of being able to dig, or is it both? I mean,
I think it's a double-edged sword, you know, and you have to figure out how do you, because there's even studies on how the black cohosh market impacts a community financially, the financial aspect on a community in the Appalachia. And it showed that there's a lot of connection, you know, to the stability economically of families and communities to do this. So I think we need to really figure it out. Transition, you know, there's no one thing is going to work. There's no blanket thing. I had lots of ideas when I first started this, like education programs for diggers and certifications and being grandfathered in if your family's always done this or you've been on record as selling prior, and kind of treating them with kid gloves. And then new people laying down the law real strict, I've thought of community education programs and how do you get them into forest farming or alternatives like saps or mushrooms and working individually with plans of what works for them, it's way more complex than simple thoughts that I have.
It's interesting that wildcrafting seems like it's, of course, you said it's very romantic, the idea of it, but it's, herbalism and wildcrafting and plant-based medicine has become really popular the past few years.
Yeah.
And it definitely is, there's a need for a certain amount of education and regulation, right? But then there's also this need for the organic flow of like the relationships, and so it's to hear you say that in the place where you live that people are leaving and not coming back and doing that work, but yet in other places people they kind of fall in love with the idea of it, and maybe, it's just interesting to hear about the dualities there and all that,
it is so much going on in there, and you can't just pick one and say this is going to work because it affects 1,000. And then all of that is important too. And so I have a theory that bioregional medicine and growing your own medicine, even if you make a community medicinal garden, where everybody pitches in and all the herbalists come there and get it together, maybe that's a romantic pie in the sky idea, But I think that if we use what grows around us or we grow our own, then we're responsible for our medicine and the longevity of our plants, rather than just relying that a company is being from sustainable options. Because that's passing the buck to a wonderful company who's working really hard, for them to carry the burden of your sustainability goals and all, And so, if we could, and stop following mama blogs and thinking everything they say you need to go buy just because Facebook says you need golden seal. Please find out if something else will work.
I know, there are alternatives. Like barberry.
Yeah. But I mean, oh gosh, we could get even deeper. Like, why do herbal schools still teach at-risk plant medicine?
Yeah.
Just take it away. Just replace it with something else. So Black Cohosh is really, really good. Okay, maybe it's the only thing that's good. Let's use leaves. Just go to leaf. Don't tell them about the root. It's going to take a while for this generation to get away that's been using it, but at least these children coming into herbalism aren't going to learn about it.
That's an interesting thing to say, because when I lived in Asheville, I definitely felt like, so I studied with Juliet, and she's pretty sensitive to that, and she talks about United Plant Savers and at-risk medicinal plants, and there's some plants she wouldn't show us, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the plants, or she would say, don't come pick at this patch, or like, you shouldn't pick this plant, or whatever, but I'm going to show you. But then some, like, she wouldn't show our class pedicularis. I don't know if that grows where you are, but it grows around Asheville, and even though it's kind of a semi-abundant in that area, she's noticed, people going back to that spot, and then it's all gone, And I think that is an issue, because when herb students first get into school, there's that thing you were saying about getting the wide eyes and taking too much, and sometimes a medicine you might not really use. Like, I mean, I'm guilty of that. Like, I harvested a bunch of Smilex root on one of our field trips, and I haven't used it, and I tinctured it, and I have like gallons of Smilex root, and I'm like, I'm not a clinical herbalist, and I don't feel like that medicine is for me right now in my life, and I'm like, what am I going to do with all this Smilex root?
Yeah, exactly.
And I've gotten more careful over the years in that way, and of course I did the United Plant Savers internship before I went to herb school, so it kind of set the stage for me. That was one of the first things I did, and it set the stage for me for thinking about a carefulness and like the knowledge of place, and some of the things like pick the leaves, the golden seal leaves instead of the root, dig the root, or whatever, ramps too, just pick the aerial tops or whatever, and so I think that's definitely, I mean, I think depending on what part of the country you're into, some of the herb schools are more strict and some don't do anything, they take their students to the same patches, and so I think you're onto something with that idea,
We've got to, just protect them, and just get a new way of thinking. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've heard today, this weekend, for the first time, like what really pushed Rosemary Gladstar into creating United Plant Savers. Mm-hmm. And realizing so long ago and early on in the herbal popularity, mm-hmm. that we were going to come to a place where we're going to lose these plants. And I think she had such a connection. I mean, I've never met her. I've just heard, and the things that I hear, it just resonates with me that she learned from the woods. Like, she heard the cry of these plants before.
Well, that reminds me that I wanted to say that you got an award by United Plant Savers?
Yeah. So yes, United Plant Savers, bless them. They were so nice, and they honored me with the 2018 Plant Conservationist Award for them, which I'm just totally humbled. Mm-hmm. And I know that there's a lot of people doing wonderful things, and that they would consider the things that I'm trying to do worthy of that is totally humbling. Mm-hmm. And such a blessing. Mm-hmm. And I'm really proud. It's very affirming, mm-hmm. To know that people believe in you, mm-hmm. and that you really can change, and that it can make a difference with one person changing. That's amazing.
We haven't gone into it too, but you taught a class at Good Medicine Confluence about how you kind of went from poacher to plant saver or whatever. And so I feel like, that now what you're doing is more stewarding and like just doing it in a different way. And I think that's pretty awesome. So
thank you.
Right now will you just say like what your website is, how people can find you if they want to look for your medicine or like read more about what you're doing, and like.
Okay, yeah. So you can always hit me up on Facebook, mm-hmm. Underneath Bear Alchemy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or I have the website underneath the same name, Bear mm-hmm. Alchemy. Mm-hmm. But I'm working on rebuilding it, mm-hmm. and refocusing it. So you can find my past work on bearsmountain.com. Mm-hmm. And pretty soon that'll fade away, mm-hmm. and we'll be totally rebranded and proud to be into our bear medicine and exploring and learning that. I'm so excited. The name just found me. Mm-hmm. I didn't find it. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to be true to it. And mm-hmm. Soon you can find me at bearalchemy.com.
Yay, cool. Well, thanks so much.
Awesome. And I have YouTube underneath the same name, cool. Bear Alchemy.
Okay.
And I try to put up little snippets from the woods and what all.
Oh, that's exciting. I want to go watch all those.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me, and maybe we can keep going at another time. And hear more and talk more about this, and it's making me miss Appalachia. Just talking.
I know. Well, bless you. We'll talk soon, love.
Okay. All right. Bye.
You just listened to episode 3 of the Ground Shots podcast, a conversation with Laurie Quesinberry. I'll be sure to include in the show notes any relevant information to our conversation, and also links to the United Plant Savers and anything else that I can think of that might be appropriate. I also wanted to mention we are doing this month a giveaway on Patreon for supporters of the Ground Shots project. Anyone $5 and up gets entered in automatically, and we'll pick a name out of the hat at the end of the month, and someone will win some of Laurie's small batch medicine. It's just a way to give back to people who are supporting us on Patreon. I also do at low tiers between $1 and $10 a month different educational components related to the podcast. Not for every single guest, but often there's more to say or do or think about some of the things that get talked about in the conversations. And I'll put together educational material either myself or with a guest that relates to what we talked about. And it will be something that is ongoing for deeper learning that anyone, between $1 and $10 a month, depending, will get access to. So I really enjoy further learning myself, so I'm happy to be sharing that. So if you feel called to join us, we would love to have you. And I think that's it. Thanks for listening to this episode, and we look forward to the next one. This episode of the Ground Shots podcast was produced by Opia Creative. Our music is by Mother Marrow. If you'd like to help us continue to make this audio project a reality, consider becoming a monthly supporter on our Patreon page at patreon.com/ofsedgeandsalt, where we have rewards like entry into patron-only giveaways, additional audio interviews, extra educational content, and much more. You can also share our work and give us a review on iTunes. Visit our website at ofsedgeandsalt.com to see what else we're up to and a log of our episodes when they come out. Check out our show notes for information about how to find us and our guests. Until next time, y'all, thanks for listening.